right, it's happening. All right, so let's do a little tour and we can check out a sample classroom, and that's actually where I'm going to start. I'm going to go into my Google Classroom, and unfortunately I don't have an authentic classroom like you all will, but for those of you brand new, please create your classrooms in your Google for Education accounts, so you know that you'll use your at kasd.org or whatever your school domain is, and that's how your students will find you and be connected with you in that space. I'm going to minimize the movie for now.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in real quick.
Yes, please do.
Yeah, the very first thing you want to make sure you do is that you are signed out of your personal account, because if you do use a personal Gmail account, and depending on whatever your default browser is in your computer, it's going to resort to your default Google account on that browser. So it's always highly recommended to just sign out of all of your Google accounts in the browser and make sure you're signed in to just your school one. Because what will happen is you'll do all this work, and if you create it in your personal account, you won't be able to share anything with your students.
Right. Yes.
And sorry for the background noise. My wife's on her students, and my son's playing Fortnite in the other room. So I'm going to mute myself again.
Yeah, we have, these are all real life sessions, people. As you all know, we're home with different situations, kids or taking care of parents or all kinds of things. So there's always people in and out of these spaces. So inside my Google Classroom, this is my demo class that I set up for the tutorials. And as you can see along the top, this is basically how you'll navigate this space. There's a stream, which is kind of like a notification board. That's how I think of it, because as the teacher, you can share announcements in this space, and it will also auto-generate an update for students in this space every time there is a new piece of classwork added. Now, if you use Google Classroom in the past, this has undergone some changes since the early days. Before, when you were in the stream, it was literally just a list of everything that you posted for kids, and it got to be a little bit messy. But now I think they've done a pretty good job streamlining that, because they've added this second tab, which is what you'll spend a lot of your time focused on, which is the classwork tab. So depending on what you teach, if you teach elementary and you teach different content areas, you might want to set this up to mimic your content areas throughout the day or your class schedule. These overarching headings that you see, these are called topics. And this black button is where you create new things in your classwork page.
Lynn, there was a request. Can you enlarge the view?
I can. Like this? Is that good? Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Right. And Josh, if you can help me out, because I turned off the chat because I didn't turn it off. I just hit it from my recording. If people ask a question.
That's why I'm navigating.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, I'll jump in with questions. So there's a couple very specific questions that looks like users have been using it. So I'll make sure we flag those. But a couple of people have, requested like the general overview, but I'll make sure to flag the pretty assignment specific questions.
Okay. So here again, in the Classworks page, when you click this create button, these are the main components that you can add to the classwork page. And they range from an assignment, and I noticed Becky asked, how do I distribute something, make kids each have their own copy, and then have them distribute it back to me for grading or feedback. So we'll look at that. A quiz assignment is something that you're asking students to complete that has a built-in Google form quiz. They call it a quiz. It's not, you don't have to grade it, but you can, and it will actually auto score if you set it up that way. A question is either a short answer or a multiple choice question also can be graded that you place on the classwork page. And then a material is simply something that you want students to have access to. So if they have a common website you need them to visit, if there's a class syllabus you want them to have, that's an example of a material that you can place in the classwork page. You can also reuse any posts that you've ever created in this class, in other classes that you created, in other classes where you're a co-teacher. So if you're a specialist teacher, if you're a special education teacher, if you're a gifted support teacher, and you're a co-teacher with another general education teacher, you can actually share each other's content and use posts from the other classrooms. And then, as I mentioned, getting those specific headings to stay organized in your class workspace, that happens by creating a topic. So I'll create a new topic now. I'll call it reading and click add. So you can see how that creates that large heading, and everything that I place within those topics will show up organized beneath those topics. All right. So the difference between posting on the stream like this, I'm going to click share something with my class. I'm excited for our first day of distance learning. Comment with one thing you're looking forward to below. Even if I pose a question in the announcement stream, in an announcement, there is no expectation that students are actually have to turn something in. An announcement holds no weight in terms of grading. It's simply something you want to share and or a discussion you'd like to have with your students in this front stream space. This type of input box should become very familiar to you as you're working through various classroom activities, because it almost always looks the same. You're going to have a spot where you can choose at the top left which classes you want to push this announcement to, and you can push it to multiple classes at a time. Okay, so if you teach 7th grade algebra and you have 4 sections of it and you're creating a classroom for each section, you can push out an assignment to all of the sections at one time. Now, when you do that, however, you lose the ability to differentiate by student. And someone also mentioned in the chat, when you decide to push out to multiple classes, you lose the ability to schedule the post for a certain day and time. And that's just how the back end of Google Classroom, I'm assuming, unless Josh knows something else, is how that's set up.
Yeah. When you do them, you lose a lot of the individual features when you decide to do multiple.
When you push
because think of a multiple post is that you want for everybody for it to be the same.
Yes.
You know, so for example, like there's no school or there are no tests or whatever it is, or you want everybody to fill out the same form because maybe you're want information about what's their favorite this or their favorite that. But if you're looking to customize certain things, you really want to be cognizant of the full-blown send this to every class, every student.
Yep. So I'm just going to release that so I can just concentrate on one class. But now once I did that, you can see, and this applies to assignments as well. I can now differentiate for just a few students in my class. So again, if you're a specialist, if you're a reading support teacher, if you're a gifted education teacher, and you want to customize materials, things with accommodations for your students or modifications, you can do that, and you can just push that out to just their streams, and the other kids won't see what accommodations or changes are being made for those students. So I'm just going to stick with all students. The things you can add to an announcement, to an assignment, to a question are always consistent. They're always these 4 things. You can pull something out of your Google Drive. You can attach a link to the web. So maybe you want them to visit this activity site or view this video on National Geographic Kids. You can attach a file that you have saved to your desktop, so or your documents folder on your computer. So if you already have a PDF that you want them to read, if you already have a PowerPoint slide set that you want them to have, attach that as a file. And then you can pull a YouTube video as well. You can do a YouTube search from here, or you can just enter the exact URL that you know already. So those are the things that you can attach to any materials that you're adding in any announcement or any assignment. And when it comes time to share, you have a few options. You can post immediately. You can schedule it for a specific date and time. So if you've already prepared something, because teachers are industrious and work ahead, but you don't want it to go live until Friday, you can schedule this for the 3rd and a certain time, and then it'll automatically be pushed out then. Or if you're not quite ready, you don't have the instructions ready, you don't have the materials ready, you can just save it as a draft, and it's going to pop up here to your saved announcements. These are some drafts that I've created the last couple of demos. So they just save right up there. This is your reusing your post options. Whenever you see those little double arrows that's saying, hey, you want to reuse a post? Go in here, find a post you've already used, and then you can reuse it from there. So let me pop into the chat. What's coming up here, Josh? You got the questions.
I'm just answering a question regarding about if you post an assignment, is that the same as an announcement? And I was just answering, the settings are the same. It's just assignment allows for if you want to, want it to be graded, and then whether or not do you want the ability to post a copy of each in the student's folder, or just that version of the file? Yeah, I think that answers somebody else's question. Like, you want somebody to post a page. Putting a copy of each in each student's folder gives them a version of that same document, but it allows them each to edit that document without changing yours. And then they have the ability to turn their version back into you. But if you just want to share something with the class hold on a second. Chase, I need you to be quiet. If you just say you have a Google Doc that you just want students to read, or a PDF which they can't edit, you're going to post that and not put a copy in each, because they're just viewing that content. The copy in each is more for them to be able to edit that version and turn it in later, and she'll be able to demo what that looks like for you.
Yeah, I'm going to do that right now.
What's the difference of stream and classwork?
Well, the
stream is everything you post. Announcements, all that stuff. Classwork are things that you want them to work on or do and such.
Yeah, the stream will be announcements and little notifications about what is going on the classwork page. That is what's in the stream. You cannot post, I cannot create an actual assignment here in the stream. I have to start that from the classwork page. So that's what I'm going to do now, because there's a lot of questions about assignments. So I'm going to click create assignment, and here's that same kind of box, although now you're going to see on the right hand side there's a whole section about grading, due dates, how many points, do you want to attach a rubric? So now you're getting a lot more options, because this has the potential of being graded. So this, and my demo assignments are always super lame. Yours are going to be great, but mine's called reading response writing, something like that. And you're going to list your instructions there. After you read the story, please complete this writing response. And now my choices as a teacher are, I can leave this wide open where students are essentially going to get this assignment and create their own doc and hand it into you. Or I can add a template that I'd like them to use so that it's consistent across the board. So I'm going to go into my Google Drive, because that's where the template is that I just made. And I'm going to either search for it by keyword, or I'll wait till this loads up. I just made a reading reflection activity. So I click that, and now I'm going to click add. So now I have this reading reflection assignment, and one of the big, so I'm going to blow it up, things that you have to decide at this point is how you want students to interact with that document. like Josh was saying, do you just want them to have view access to it? Do you just want them to read it or have it available as an extra material? Or choice 2 is multiple students can edit file. That's a tricky one. That means that every student you push it out to is now an editor of that one document. So I don't think you want to do that for this scenario. Sometimes you do want that. Sometimes you want to bring the whole class in on a shared set of slides, or you want to bring the whole class in on a doc. But in this case, I'm going to choose choice 3, make a copy for each student. So now, when you think about your professional work in Google Drive, if you create something and you share it with a colleague, you have to add their email address, add them as an editor or a viewer, and share it that way. You do not have to do that when you're using Google Classroom with your students, because this is the digital workflow platform where now it's going to automate the copying for each student and the sharing with each student. And that happens right here. So I'm going to choose make a copy for each student. I'm going to go over to the right. I'm going to choose my class. I'm going to choose everybody gets a copy. And for points, it defaults to 100. It can be anything. It can be ungraded. You can choose a due date or not. If you choose a due date, this due date will automatically populate on the calendar, on the Google Calendar that is associated with this specific classroom. And for topic, once you have your topics set up, and even if you forget one, you can create a new one right here. But this is a reading activity, so I'm going to put it in the reading topic. Now, rubrics are like Google Classroom 102, and I wasn't really looking to get into that in this introductory session. I do talk about it in the video of part 2, Google Classroom. But essentially, if you have common rubrics that students have been used to using all year, you can import them into Google Classroom so they know what their expectations are for the different assignments. Originality reports, again, that will match their submitted work to text that's out there on the web, and just make sure that it flags for plagiarism markers. It's actually more helpful, in my opinion, for kids to learn to use those versus trying to catch them in things. So I don't really talk about that a lot. So that's here. And now here are my options. I can assign it right now, I can schedule it for later, or I can save a draft. So I'm going to assign it right now, and I'm going to go to my other student's Google account so I can show you what that looks like from a student perspective. So now on my classwork page, here's the activity. It posted a notification to the stream, like, hey, your teacher just posted this. And now I'm going to jump to my son's Google account. He is a pretend student in my class. So when I am now a student, I can see that he created this, or he has a notification about this. He sees on the left-hand side due dates that are coming up. And so I'm going to click this. I'm pretending I'm Cole now. So this is the student platform. Here's my teacher's instructions. Here's how many points it's worth. I can leave a comment that's for the whole class could see. I could privately send a comment to my teacher if I'm confused about the directions, or if I feel like I don't have all the information I need to get started, or if something came up at home and I can't complete this by the due date. And now it says, here's your work. It's been assigned to me, Cole Hilt. What happened when I distributed that with each student gets a copy is it automatically tagged the document with the student's name. It put my title behind it, so you're not going to have to worry about untitled documents being submitted to you. And so now we're going to do his response after the story. I read a fable about, we literally just did this, a camel and a pig. The camel said it was better to be tall. The pig said it was better to be short. In the end, each had its own benefits. So he's in first grade and probably wouldn't write that eloquently, but that is the summary that we read. So now, as the student, if you notice, there is a new button in the top right. And the new button in the top right is turn it in. So when Cole is done with his assignment, he will not have to share with his teacher. It's already been done. He's going to click turn in, and it takes me back to classroom as the student, and it's verifying, are you sure you want to turn this into your teacher? So I'm going to say, yep, I'm going to submit my attachment, turn it in, and now that name assigned is going to turn into turned in. So the student knows he turned it in. He can, if he chooses, unsubmit his work. And that means, you know, he was thinking through, oh, I forgot a major part of my response. I need to go back and fix that. You will get a record of that as a teacher. You will see when it was submitted, when it was unsubmitted, when it was resubmitted. And if you have a student who takes advantage of that, which occasionally they will, you can just have a private conversation with them about that. All right. So that's the workflow process. I'm going to jump back to teacher view. Now, when I go to this assignment, now I'm in teacher view. I see all of my students. I see all of their documents, even if they haven't opened it up yet. I see which students turned it in and which did not. And I see the number of points available for the assignment, and then I can go ahead and I can grade it. Now, I'm going to go into Cole's document as the teacher. And on that right-hand side, I have this whole, and you're not going to do this for every assignment, I'm thinking, especially at the elementary level. I know a lot of grading requirements are being kind of put on hold right now. But you can go in, you can give, more importantly than a grade, you can type feedback. You can say, this was a well-written summary, good job. You can even start, yours are going to be better. You can even do things like save often used comments in a comment bank. So if your students are constantly not really pulling the best adjectives that they could in their writing, you could say, please try to find some more descriptive adjectives. And click add, so that'll add it to your comment bank, and then you can copy and paste that as you're going through students' work. These arrows at the top will let you go through student by student by student, and you can just copy and paste and write your own comments for each one. All right.
Lynn.
Josh, I have to pause there a minute to get my husband something for my daughter, so you want to take over for a sec?
Sure. All right. So I don't have access to her Google Classroom, so I'm just going to run through some of the questions here. Enlarging the text was one of them, if people didn't see. To enlarge your screen in Chrome, if you hit Control+, that will continue to zoom it in and enlarge everything, and Control -sign will zoom out as much as you want. And then if you want to get back to what's considered the normal screen, which is 100% zoom, you can just hit Control-0. And that will allow students to zoom things in and out. All of the Google products, Docs, Sheets, and such have new accessibility functions. They have a magnifier as well as screen reader support on that. When she gets back, I'll make sure she demos that out. There was a couple questions about, let's see here. I've heard you create slides that students can just type on and submit. Yes, so if you create a master slide or slide, you can submit that slide as an assignment. And then if you select the ability to put a copy in each file, each student will have access to a slide that they can type on. If you want students to actually just type in an entire slideshow, then you would create the assignment of the Google slideshow and give them editing access. And then they would be able to go in and edit within the slideshow. So it all depends what you want to do as to whether you want them to work on their own individual slide or the slideshow.
Go.
I use this strategy a lot in math, where I'll pose a math question and then I'll share out, and each student or groups of students will work and do their solution on an individual slide. And then they will submit the slide and take it and import it into a slideshow. And then what happens is then I have an entire slideshow, 5, 6, 7, 8 slides of a solution to a math problem that I can use as a notice and wonder. So that is an option. Let me go back up to another question here. I know we can create many classes. What about when we create topics? I'm currently creating a help tech section topic. This includes links to students and parents. Once it's complete, can I share it with all of my other classes? Or do my understanding, and I'll let Lynn confirm this just to demo it, but as of what I know, up to my workings with Google Classroom, that topics are specific for that class and for that class only. But I will have her check on that when she comes back in.
Yeah, I'm here. It was a very short-lived.
Okay, I'm fairly certain that topics cannot be shared with multiple Google Classrooms, that they are specific to that class, unless that's been a new update to Google Classroom.
Yeah, I think that you're correct on that. So essentially, you'd create a tech help topic in each of your classrooms, and then all you have to do is you can reuse your posts from each one and paste it over to essentially the other space, if that makes sense.
If you're wondering what the heck is a topic was a way that Google put in for you to help with organizing your classroom. So I think of the way I use topics are Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3, Unit 4. So a student could go to the Unit 1 topic and see the assignments that are related to Unit 1. So you can assign a student to a specific topic. That way it helps the students, go back and do that. Other things that I've seen people do with assignments is number them, so that way you have, a hierarchical numerical order of your assignments. I've seen people do like #001, #002, #003 when naming the assignments. Because when you think of, if you use this for a couple months, but when you think about when you use this for an entire school year, the amount of assignments you may post, think back to students turning in and doing work. What was that assignment again? It allows you to have like a little numerical code or chart to keep track of that. But
yeah, a lot of people do number their assignments. I'm trying to think of, let me see. There's some, Alice Keeler writes about that a lot. Like if you're going full blown, like if you're a secondary teacher and every day you're going to populate this with a number of things, which my 2 cents is that as we start, keeping it simple, really, especially as kids and parents are learning about how to navigate all these spaces. But when we get to the point where you are pushing a lot of things out, it does help to number them, just to help reference them. So if you're saying to kids, don't forget number 005 is due on this day. So it's totally a personal preference. It's up to you and how you want to organize everything. Every classwork looks different.
I did get a comment here that somebody was able to create a topic for all classes. So that must be an update they have done. Unfortunately, I will tell you the hardest thing in Lynn and I's job with working with Google is that they update things on almost a daily basis, and we don't always get all of those updates. So many times we do trainings and we tell people we're not sure if you're able to do this, and then it's able to do it. So that is a great update. So to the person who asked in regards to, can you create a topic for all of your classes? Now, yes, you can.
So where and how?
Well, how many classes do you have?
Well, I had 2. So I just went in to reuse a post from another topic, and it's not. My topics aren't listed here.
But you might have to create the topics first before you. Well, you might have to create the topics in all your classes before you can reuse the post, I would guess.
We'll check on that. I don't know. Yeah. Like Josh said, it changes all the time. Yeah. So if you teach 10 classes, this is another thing to consider. So if I'm the music teacher in elementary, K to 6, and I have 3 sections of 3rd grade, I think Mr. Troxel's here from Fleetwood today. He and I chatted last week. I would not build a Google Classroom for every homeroom of 3rd graders. I would build a 3rd grade Google Classroom. Now you're still going to have 6 classrooms, especially if they're getting the same content. I would not differentiate by homeroom. That's just me in terms of management. As a specialist, I would not want to manage 22 classes in Google Classroom. Even though you can push out things the same during this time, simple is better. And if you really wrap your head around it and later in the year or next year you decide, yep, every homeroom can have its own, then that's awesome. Hi, Scott. But I would try to streamline this as much as you can to get till you're comfortable so it doesn't overwhelm you. A lot of classroom teachers, sometimes they just start with one content area or two content areas. Maybe you'll just start out with math and ELA because that's where we really want to keep hammering the focus with kids during this time. So start with math and ELA, get everything comfy, and then maybe add science, and then maybe add social studies. That's how I would approach it if I was a classroom teacher and I was new to classroom, for sure. That's essentially the tour of Stream and classwork. I am going to go back to classwork. Let me talk about the people page. In the people page, this will list your students and it will list your teachers and co-teachers. If your students have email, you can send them an email from here. If your students have never been in Google Classroom and now you need to communicate with them how to get in from home, I recommend sending the login information to parents and having them enter their Google credentials at google.com, sign in, student@bciu.org, password that you're providing, and then teach them how to find Google Classroom and then how to find this plus sign. And again, if your students have been in Google Classroom this year, you don't need to worry about this, but there are a lot of districts who are pushing out Google Classroom K-5, for example, and those kids haven't used it yet. So this is a little tricky. Your students are going to click a plus sign and they're going to click join a class. And each Google Classroom has a unique code. And you can find that code right on the homepage, right on the stream. Class code NJKIM L3. And any student who is in your Google domain can use that code to join your class, which is why I recommend sending that specific code to parents via email with the login instructions if they haven't been in yet. If you know your students have access to email, if they're 6th and 7th graders and Gmail has been enabled for them and you are permitted to communicate with them that way, then you could essentially invite them. You can invite them by email. So you could say student@bciu.org. That's not a real person, so I can't do it, but that's how you would do it. You would type or paste their email address in, their Google email, and they would get the invitation in their email. That will only work if email is turned on for your domain, because it's going to go to Gmail. So that's a good thing to note. When you get there, again, this is like Google Classroom 102, not the introductory stuff, but there is a grades portal now built in. You see the whole class, you see all of the assignments that you pushed out or questions which are graded. You see the grades that were already put in. If you see any past due date, it will say missing. And if you click on any of the students' names, you can see the breakdown of their individual assignments and if any comments were left, and you can visit their work at any time from that space. So that's another way that you can go through. This was what I used for the demo last week. So you can go in anytime and view that work. So Josh is answering that question. So back to the classwork page, I would like to show you the quiz assignment and the question. I'm going to start with question because question is a super easy way to get student engagement in the classwork space without having this big blown up assignment. Okay, so here's question. Your choice is short answer or multiple choice. It's very simple. So let's do a multiple choice. What is your, I always do, like I said, very lame thing. So what was your best meal this week? So we had, let's do this. Best cooking accomplishment this week. You'll think of something better. I made my own PB&J. I helped Mom and Dad bake cookies. I found a new recipe on the internet. So these are the choices. You can add attachments. So if you want students to view a YouTube video of you reading a book or of the author reading a story and then answer a question about it or tell you their favorite part, you can attach a video. You can attach an image. You can attach a link. You can attach a document from Drive. So the same kind of options are there for you. You can also set grades. I'm going to do ungraded for this. You can set a due date for when you want the questions answered. And same thing, you can choose a topic. This is a science, maybe a choice boards activity. And you can allow students to see the answers to the class, from the class. So I'm going to click ask, and we'll see what that looks like from a student perspective. Here's one of my other students. So she's going into her class. She sees there's a new question, and so she's going to do her answer here. She helped me bake cookies, turn it in. Are you sure you want to turn it in? I'm sure. So now her answer has been logged. We'll do Cole's answer as well. His to-do list, he got a new, oh, that was an old one. Here's the new question. Turn it in. So now as the teacher, my two students just did that. I'm going to go back to actual size for a sec. Here is my cooking question. Two of my students turned it in, two did not, and I allowed summary of responses so the class can see. So if you're looking to get your students' voice and choice in some things coming up in the next several weeks, you could offer little mini surveys through Google Classroom, questions, ask them what they want to study next or what they want to learn about, put that in there. Just ask, classroom community building questions in there as well. And you can also allow students to comment on spaces. That's one thing that I'm going to show you next in the settings that you'll want to, before you push anything out to kids, really take a look at your settings. And the settings are in the top right of Google Classroom under your gear wheel. You can list specific class details. You can find the class code here as well. If for some reason you need to reset it or disable it, you can do that from there. This is an important feature that you want to take note of. In the stream, what level of permissions would you like to give students in the stream? Can they post and comment? That's actually the default, which means any student in your class can post in the stream. So you might want to, if you're not ready for that or comfortable, you might want to change that to students can only comment. And if you don't want to allow any student commenting, you can actually turn it off and say only teachers can post or comment in the stream. Classwork notifications that show up in the stream, do you want those to show up? Do you not? Do you want to show full-blown attachment details? And then there's some grading preferences you can set up as well. So definitely go into your settings and set that up to be the way that you'd like to be. All right, so what other questions do we have since we advertise this as a Q&A?
Can the survey question responses be read aloud in Google Classroom, or do they have to be pushed out into Google Docs with the screen reader support turned on?
I don't have, let me get.
Because in my experience, you've had to push it out into one of the other Google products to get the speech or text to speech turned on, because it won't, unless you're running Google Classroom in the Chrome browser.
Or read and write, which you should be anyway.
Yeah, but I'm saying if people are using it mobilely, though.
Yeah. Let me see if I can get Announcify to work with this. So there are extensions that will read the screen to you, but let me see, classwork, this. Yeah, I don't. Is this? I want to see the whole question because I don't think a page like this can be read really. Let me see if I can get it. So this is Announceify, which is a great extension, but it's essentially pulling text content. It's great for using when you're asking kids to read an article online because it cleans up the whole page. But the fact that it's doing this, I think it's thinking too hard. Now, read and write for Google Chrome might be able to do it. That's a really good question, and we can look into that. I've not had any success or anything that I know of that can automatically read that. So for accommodations, you might need to consider putting the text into a Google Doc to have that read. Or you could, when you're building the question, you could actually attach the PDF of the question text, and a student could open that up and have that read to them. So that might be one thing that you want to consider doing. You could, just for those students, you could send out that question with an extra PDF attached, and they could complete it in that space. For morning meeting, would morning meeting be a topic, or would you just post a Zoom link in the announcement? So my recommendation is that you're using a designed Zoom link, the same one each day is what I'm guessing, since it's a regular occurrence. And I would make that a material under a morning meeting topic. So I would say topic, morning meetings. I'd add that topic, and then I'd create a material that stands still. It's not an assignment like kids have to hand it in or out. So it would say link to our meeting room, Zoom link. And then I'd click add link, and I'd paste the Zoom link in there, and then teachers always have it. All right. That's what I would do for that, or kids always have it. Any other questions that are coming up? So Allie, yeah, it seems like overwhelming. This is the friendliest of all of the interfaces for elementary kids. If you throw something at them like a Schoology or a Canvas, in my opinion, this is way easier to navigate despite the technical pieces that you'll deal with as a teacher. However, we've been offering just some other suggestions that are out there to start as your kids are just getting through things. Honestly, if you're not really in need of the distribution and the collection at this time, like if you're just starting really slow and you still want to wrap your head around Google Classroom, one thing you can do is you can just use it as, let me jump to one of my other accounts. My daughter's school, she's 4, and she actually, her teacher is a Montessori school teacher. So there's not any type of technology being used in class on a daily basis. But what she did was set up just a list of activities in Google Classroom that my daughter does not have to interact with in terms of handing things in and getting assignments, but she can get all of the materials that she needs. So she organized everything. She can go in. There's just, some words that my kid and I can read together, and they're more like at home, of course, hands-on activities. But if you had links to things like, here's something, let's keep reading, a Google Doc. So this is like who offers free webcasts and free readings. So as a parent, this is a lot less overwhelming for me because I don't have to hand anything in. And I know older grades have higher expectations during this time, but this is a perfect place to start. And as you find your kids are comfortable, if you want to survey parents and say, hey, have you wrapped your head around Google Classroom yet? Maybe you, again, start with math and say, I'm going to push out an activity in math. If you want to try handing it in, that would be cool. So you could try that. So I hope that helps you. Heather says, if I have a paper quiz and I add it to my Google Drive, is there a way to turn it into slides? So there are a number of options for when you have something in Drive. That's a PDF, and I'm looking for one right now because I don't have that many PDFs. When you open it with Google Drive, it could maintain the formatting, and you could open up a space for kids to type in it. Let me see. Let's just try this. If you choose in Google Drive, this is my PDF, and now I'm going to do open with Google Docs. And I'm going to see what happens. I'm not promising you it's going to be pretty based on what your PDF looks like, but you can convert things over. All right, so here's some Lexia Core 5 tips. All the text came over, which is kind of cool. So if I'm a student, if I'm going to ask my students to edit this, I would probably insert a table of 1 square, and that's where I would want my students write your responses here. So it would be question and then answer. And I would just keep doing that so they can write their responses in a box. So it's a little bit more organized. Insert table with just 1 square. So try that with the PDF, opening the PDF as a Google Doc through Drive. And yeah, and then you this could be the assignment you push out in Google Classroom, and each kid would get their own copy, and then they could write their answers right in. What I was creating in Google Slides as an activity too for the littles, you can do lots of drag and drop activities where they're doing sorting and they're sharing all of that. Now this is a terrible, again, you know, I just pull these out of my head. You probably wouldn't be doing AR and AT at the same time, but here we go. So they could drag and drop and things like that. There are tons of these already created. If you do search for like elementary or maybe sight words, sorting, Google Slides. These exist already, and I would skip down past all of the Teachers Pay Teachers ones, to be quite honest with you, and I'd go to try and find ones that are free for use. So this is even just sight words practice, where you could push out and kids could take this home and they could just flip through and do and go. And these things already exist. People are happy to share them. Or you could create your own. If you're looking for a specific activity, let me know. I did share lots of them yesterday in our G Suite for distance learning session. So check that out. So the question is, would read aloud also be a topic? Do you have any suggestions how to organize daily read aloud videos that have been pre-recorded? My suggestion is to get to know Google Slides really well, because what you're suggesting here is you want to showcase maybe day by day or week by week videos for kids. So I'd create a Google Slides. It would be called Read Aloud's Mrs. Hilt's Class. I'd give it a title. I would make a new slide. I'd say Monday, April 6th, and I would maybe put the author and the book title name. And then I would insert video, and I'm just going to grab one from YouTube. If you're creating your own, you could pull it out of Google Drive. Here's the good egg. All right, I put that here. I'd probably verify copyright, and I would just keep building on it day after day, or however often you're publishing them. And now this piece, this Google slide, I would go to my Google Classroom. I would create a new topic. I'd call it Read Alouds. And I would put one material there. And that material I would put there are my Google Slide deck that will grow day after day. I don't have to keep reattaching things. I love Google Slides for that purpose, because you can build onto it, but you don't constantly have to be pushing out new stuff in the classwork page. So I'm going to post that. I hope that helps, if that makes sense. Okay. Yeah, we have about 5 minutes left. We'll get more questions. Oh, it looks like it didn't pop. Oops, I didn't put it in the right topic. You can drag and drop things too, which is nice in the, if you make a mistake or if you want to add it to something new, you can put that there. So now for, did I pick how I want students to view that? I think I just added it as a material so kids can view it then. Any other questions? It's a lot, guys. We know that, and that's why we're trying to like plug away and put these little ideas out there. Don't be overwhelmed thinking you have to do everything all at once. Start small. Start with a list of enrichment and review activities. Start with one content area. We know you're all doing your very best, and it's exciting to see the fun stuff that's coming out. Um, I'm going to do a specific session next week about Google Forms, or maybe later this week, and also about Google Sites. I think people turn to Google Classroom because it's well known. And if you think about it, there are also a lot of similar things that you can do with Google Sites if you're not in need of the kids handing things out or handing things in and pushing it out. If you want a simple space to create a class website, something like Google Site, now this is a little more complex since it's the one for work, but you can have a page for math, and you can put links, and you can put videos, and you can put slides, and you can put Google Docs. If you have a page for reading, you can put the PDFs you're talking about from Words Their Way and things that you have access to. You can essentially design this to mimic all of it's like be like your electronic little file cabinet, but you're opening up and sharing with parents and sharing with kids. If you don't need the constant assignment pushing out and coming in, you can do both. Like if I was going in the classroom tomorrow as a new teacher, I would build a Google site for my class, and I would build a Google Classroom. I would only use the classroom for distribution of work and collection of work, and I would use the site for building out my resources. And that's my personal preference. But if you're overwhelmed by Classroom and you'd rather just have a one visit kind of place without the workflow, then sites might work for you too. So I'm going to do a session on that. The question I received is, do you have to keep reposting a doc when you update it in your Drive? No. But remember this, if you push out a copy for each student, for example, the weekend plans, I chose the attachment and I said, make a copy for each student. I cannot go back and make original or changes to the original and expect to see them here. Once a copy is made, that copy is now the new original for that kid. So make sure your updates are the way you want them to be. Now, if you just post a resource, and you make changes to that, then that will be reflected if you just post the link. But not if they've been made copies. I hope that helps. All right. Now, I didn't even look at our Google Doc questions. We did talk about the slides. If you have more questions, feel free to add them to this document. I will post the recording to this because we didn't talk about anything like super confidential or anything like that. And yeah, join us for future sessions. Get to these tutorials. Just why they're kind of lengthy because I did walk through all the steps of things. But I'm really happy that you joined us today, and I want to thank you, and I want to thank Josh for being my helper and my knowledgeable Google Trainer assistant. And yeah, so that's all I got. Thanks for coming, guys.
And we have our emails too. I'll put my email in the chat. Don't be afraid to reach out to us either if you have individual questions after the fact as well, because we are in a very similar situation as you, learning things on the fly and trying to answer questions, as well as, you know, Lynn and myself have young children. So we are also trying to get our kids on their Google Classrooms as well.
Yeah.
So we
just
get
set
it.
up Seesaw today, so that was fun.
We totally understand it. I have a wife who's a teacher who's doing office hours with her kids on Google Classroom and Zoom too. So we get it.
Yep. We're here for you. Thank you.
All
We'll
right,
see you next time.
Yep.